Fucking bet. Okay. That looks live enough. All right, so this topic is going to be about strategy, like grand strategy, the big dick strategy, that kind of stuff. Talking about population, map flow, utilizing resources, that kind of shit. Um, and bada bing, bada boom. So quick notes for those who are not in the other one. The main thing that you need to know for this one is the problem solving process, right? In terms of like the leadership process, what you should be doing as a lead to do shit. So assess your resources, assess the problem, figure out how you're going to fix the problem with the resources you have, figure out obstacles in that way, and then deal with said obstacles or figure out a way to deal with them, right? So this could be like, hey, I want to cap a base. I have this many resources. What can I do with this? I can cap a single point base because I have two squads. Let's go for that. But that's a Vanu base. Our incursion's on Vanu right now, so we're going to go to the TR front instead, right? That is the actual problem solving process in a nutshell. There's going to be a reference through this, so just be aware of that kind of thing. All right. Fucking bet, boys. Cool, that button works. All right, so first thing, population. Right now that we're talking about strategy, we care about population. It's a big thing. This again is assessing your resources. Um, Overpop is king. Okay, there's two kind of arguments on this. One was put forward by Jetfire, and one was put forward by me. And now that Jetfire's out of the outfit, I hereby declare that I am right and he is wrong, and he can't argue against me with it, even though we're saying literally the same fucking thing, which is overpop is. He says overpop doesn't matter. He says that a smaller force can deal with a larger force, right? I say overpop absolutely matters. A smart smaller force will force overpop on a larger force, and therefore win against a larger force. And what do I mean by that? Um, it means that if you're in a fucking hallway and you have anti turrets and heavies shooting down the hallway, it doesn't matter how many bodies they can really throw at you, you're gonna be able to kill them all, right? If you have enough people shooting down the hallway, if you have enough explosives going down the hallway, you got six heavies with thumpers for some god awful reason firing down that hallway, you will kill everything in that hallway. It doesn't matter if they've got 2 people or 200 people, you will kill everything, right? Because that's how AoE works in this fucking game. That's how bullets work in this game. You will lay down enough rounds to kill everybody, right? This is what happens in triple stacks. You got 3 squads holding a triple stack with Router. They double your numbers. Unless they all rush at the exact same time with like a huge max crash or some shit, you will hold the line, even though you're outnumbered. Because the actual combat zone is just those hallways, right? Those up and down stairways, right? Primary and secondary stairs. And in those combat zones, you will probably have better head clickers and more head clickers than what they can provide. And you have more augments for your shooters than what they have. So in the actual combat situation, you are outnumbering them and you are outskilling them. Literally outskilling, legitimately outskilling, not just like memeing it. Um, so in that context, that's what the whole overpop is king actually means. Whenever you're thinking about a strategic play, you always want to think about how can I minimize the number of forces the enemy has and maximize the number of forces we have, or augment my force to make sure we have enough force overall, enough power to beat their power level. Does that all make sense?
Right. So let me repeat. You're saying that it doesn't matter the overall population on the play field in the area you're at right at that time. It's a matter how many you're engaging at any given time.
Bingo. Bingo. Yes. Um, a level 200 recursion doesn't matter if he's not shooting at you, right? And a level 2 Vanu or TR newbie, fucking simp for Pale Tiger. Doesn't matter if he's not shooting at you, right? If he's not actively aiding in the combat situation in some capacity, if he's just running outside on the fucking road or running from spawn to the building, he's not actively doing anything to change reality, right? The What he is doing has no bearing on the fact that you are 2 minutes out from a point cap, right? Now, eventually, he could be in a situation to help with that. He could be working towards that, right? He could be running across from spawn to the building that you are in to fight you. But until he's there, it is irrelevant. He's not actively doing anything, right?
So is was the other person saying though that three coordinated people could overpop 10 uncoordinated people so that pop doesn't matter? Is that what his statement is?
You can do that. His stake is more of like it's just a general like pop doesn't matter. And to be fair, like I was poking fun at him, like he's right in a way, right? We're both saying the same thing. It's just the way we phrase it. His is a more simple argument for it. And mine is a more like complicated argument for it because I find his way like a little bit disingenuous. I think pop absolutely does fucking matter, right? It reminds me of like when I was in high school or when I was in middle school, I was in band and I was told that to play quieter, you need to use more air with your if you're playing one instrument. That makes no physical sense. How the fuck am I supposed to play an instrument quietly by using more air and putting more fuel into the instrument? That makes
And
no
was it right?
fucking sense. No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all right. But it got the point across because the actual reason my teacher told me that was to make sure that I didn't develop a bad habit of using too little air. So instead of doing that, I learned how to use a lot of air when playing quiet, which is a much better skill to use than going, oh, I need to play quieter, therefore I'll play with less air because the quality of sound you make on a wind instrument is directly related to how much air you put through the horn. Um, so in this context, it's the same kind of thing. It's the argument of pop doesn't matter is accurate but disingenuous, if that makes sense. It is intentionally trying to paint a picture of that pop doesn't matter, because that is the easiest way to get the message across, right? It's much easier to tell people that pop doesn't matter than explain that pop does matter, but you're creating a microcosm little gunfight, and in that situation, pop is what actually matters, right? Because the statement, we're outnumbered by a wild card's pop, but we're in a triple stack and we're holding, you are still technically outnumbered by wild card's pop, and that pop doesn't matter, right? That overpop doesn't matter. Their overpop does not matter in that situation. Because you have made it your micro situation. There's the macro and the micro, right? Macro is the whole hex, basically, the whole base area. Micro would be like in the hallway or the building or something like that. In that context, you are out popping them most likely because you're playing well and coordinated. So it matters there. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Basso? You there? I see you line up, but I don't hear anything.
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
Yeah. So yeah, his Jet's argument is basically it's like looking at the grand scale, pop doesn't matter, and I just look at it one level lower and focus on the micro level versus where he focuses on the macro. That's the big difference. We're saying the same thing, it's just different ways of saying the same thing. Um, and I would push mine till the end of time, just like you would push his till the end of time. Okay, cool. Any other questions on population right now? And we'll get into more stuff on pop later. But alright, cool. Now that I got a random tangent about music in this presentation I'm recording for Jack, that'll be fun for him to listen to. Speed. Speed is another thing that you need to think about as you're making strategic decisions on the map, right? Strength or speed augments your strength. Okay, it is relative to how strong your force is initially, um, and can augment or hurt your force, right? It is not a I am faster, therefore I am stronger. It is much better a lot of times to take 30 seconds to pick up some max suits at the warp gate and then drop on a point, if time allows that, versus just fucking, taxi revering there with dart or with beacons. Um, you don't always need a rush. There are situations where absolutely you do need a rush, and getting that speed can be really useful. And I can situations like that is if like you're playing if the TR and NC are double teaming Vanu or something like that, you want to be fast because the Terrans are probably holding down Vanu troops, so you want to be fast. There are situations where you want to be slow because if the TR are 1 minute or like 3 minutes out from capping a Vanu base, that the Vanu are actually trying to defend but failing, and you as NC start to cap another base, well, when that base falls, all those Vanu are going to redeploy somewhere. They're probably going to hit your base, right? Depending on how the map flows. So those are things you want to be aware of when you're moving with speed and everything. Sometimes in a situation, it's better to wait 4 minutes to see where that Vanu pop goes, and then hit a base. Or vice versa. Like I'm going to start attacking this Terran base but I know there's a huge fight at a Gobs base on the side of the map, and the Terran are about to clean that fight up, which means it's probably Gobs protecting, or it's a Gobs base on the other side of the map, right, fighting the Vanu. They're probably about to clear that fight up just based on looking at the map. Oh, the overpop. I can see Vanu pop the mission, yada yada, which means Gobs will be free to redeploy somewhere. And if we start hitting this base, they'll probably come to us. So we need to be ready for that and expect that kind of thing to happen. And speed directly ties into this. There are situations where, hey, we need to get on that ASAP. We need to steal that base ASAP. We need to get on that point and set up ASAP, because we expect them to show up. There are other situations where we don't want them to show up, so we wait for them to go somewhere else initially and make the first play, and then we hit when there's an opening. Does that make sense?
Yes, but how do you read that? At some point we'll talk about that, right?
Yes, absolutely yes. Yeah, yeah. Cool. All right, we're gonna watch a video. Let me know if you guys hear this.
I remember years ago being intrigued by Napoleon's lightning campaign across Italy in 1796. His small, ragged army of less than 38,000 men began the campaign against 60,000 Piedmontese and Austrians. And yet, Napoleon had victory after victory, and once I researched more thoroughly, I was puzzled by the numbers. For example, at the Battle of Mondovi, he outnumbered the Piedmontese. And at the Battle of Castiglione, he also had more men on the field than the Austrians. How was he able to pull this off? I thought he was the one outnumbered. And that's when I was introduced to the military principle of concentration of force and defeat in detail. Author Edward J. Erickson writes, "Defeat in detail is a doctrinal military term that means to defeat an enemy by destroying small portions of its armies instead of engaging its entire strength. Practically speaking, this happens when the mass or weight of one army is brought to bear against smaller portions of an opposing army, thereby achieving decisive superiority. This is most often seen when an army divides itself into smaller groups, which can easily be separated and defeated in isolation." So it pretty much works like this. Let's say this is your objective, and you only have 12,000 men, while the enemy has 20,000. This is what Napoleon would do. He would advance and spread out his forces. Consequently, the enemy disperses their forces as well and garrisons each town. Now, remember, you must always have superior numbers when you are the attacking force. Only then can you be sure of victory. So, if you were to order a mass attack all along the front, it would be 3,000 versus 5,000. Not good odds. However, Napoleon would do something clever. On the eve of battle, he would concentrate his forces, perhaps leaving only small detachments to cover the front. And then he would choose to attack only one point, preferably the weakest, and crush them there. Thus, at the actual point of contact with the enemy, it is you who outnumbers them. This is the concentration of force. And because the enemy units were so spread out and far apart from each other, they put themselves in a position to be defeated in detail. It's brilliant, yet simple. You end up engaging only a portion of the enemy instead of its whole army. And it's important to note that a crucial factor for this to occur successfully is having capable forces who can maneuver quickly before the opposing side catches on to what you are doing. So speed helps you achieve surprise, thus ensuring victory. Napoleon would use this strategy during his campaigns. Napoleon would use this strategy during his campaigns. He constantly defeated superior armies separately before they were able to combine against him. Other historical examples include the Battle of Tannenberg. In the beginning phase of World War I, a German army was able to defeat two Russian armies separately. In the Balkan Wars, the Ottoman army was defeated because it was divided into several groups. Their enemies therefore were able to achieve numerical superiority on the battlefield. Rommel, in the North African campaign, would always mass his tanks when fighting the British. He once remarked to a captured British officer, "What difference does it make if you have 2 tanks to my 1 when you spread them out and let me smash them in detail?" And General Stonewall Jackson in 1862 was able to fight off 3 Union armies totaling 52,000 men with only an army of 17,000. And if you want to see how he did that, you can click here for that video.
Alright, does that make sense?
That's pretty cool.
Oh, that.
Bet. Yeah, no, it's really, really cool. I'm glad. I forget, someone sent this video to me a while ago. It's posted on one of our channels, and it's a really, really good video that really details like the way you should kind of be thinking of the map in these contexts. Now, notice they did talk about speed there. Speed, again, is important in right situations, but you have to know how to use it properly. A lot of that comes from experience, and general rules of like, hey, if I make this quick, what are the benefits of making a quick, decisive action to go for this base versus pulling skill suits or prepping properly or something like that, right? It's a pro and con situation. You just need to understand how to match that properly. Okay, so that's it on the pop shit. Next up, we're trying on map flow. So map flow is how forces flow on the map. This does tie into population. Um, but think of it more of ebbs and flows of power as opposed to literal numbers. Ideally, good example of how this example of what I mean by like map flow, map influence here. This is a shot of Deutschland, right, Germany, when it was unifying. Um, and the picture on the left side is from what is it? Fucking what's the video called? Extra History. Highly recommend. Good, great channel, great channel. And it's Otto von Bismarck who wanted to, for those who don't know, unified Germany. Started with Prussia, started unifying all the German states, and eventually created Germany. And what happened during the Austro-Prussian War? Um, Germany wanted to squabble with Austria. They got their chance, and their concern was the French doing something about the war, right? It turns out the French Emperor Napoleon III was a dipshit and was like, I don't give a fuck, you do what you want. And Bismarck's like, kick ass. That's right there. So he launched his war against the Austrians and he smashed them. And he was able to bring in all of southern Germany with them. Right? Kingdom of Bavaria, Württemberg down here, Frankfurt, all this kind of shit, Munich, all that stuff, was then brought in to the war, or brought into the Confederation, right? To create Germany. Um, France then woke up the next day after the peace treaty was signed to a unified German empire on its border and flipped its shit. As it should, because suddenly the state next to you doubled its size and power overnight by beating one of the strongest empires in the continent, and at the time the world, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Um, or Austrian Empire, yeah, Austro-Hungarian Empire. Um, so it was terrified, and it should be, right? And the point of this is that France's non-action in this situation allows Germany to create itself, right? And more so, Germany's actions changes the entire balance of power in Europe. By Bismarck's decisions and his actions, he created this to happen. Your actions as a platoon lead and squad lead and your decisions affect the rest of the map in a wide variety of ways. Usually about ebbs and flows of force and how population shifts. Population is a finite resource, all right? They can't just create more population. That's not how the game works, right? So, as a finite resource, you have to understand how to play numbers and play the map so that you are always outnumbering the enemy and ideally bring better skill than they do to guarantee your wins. And for a thought process with that, we're going to look at here and forces here. So this is Germany. This is Europe during World War I, right? I don't know what time frame this is, but this is the fronts as of 1914. Which for those who don't know, these fronts very barely changed outside. The Russian front changed a little bit, actually a good amount. I think they got the Brest-Litovsk. But outside of that, like the Western Front barely changed, right? Because trench warfare is a thing, yada yada. So let's do some theory crafting here. What happens? Okay, we're Germany. All right, everyone, get your German accents on. Okay, we're Germany now. All right. What do you do if Russia starts an offensive? What's your first thought?
Defend.
Okay. Pog. Good. Correct. What would your process be to defend stuff?
Well, as Germany, I would want. Is Russia offensive on solely Germany, or is it just wanting to take land?
What do you mean?
Like, let's say, like, does it care about Austria-Hungary at all? Does it?
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want
It's a
land,
shared
or-
front. It's a shared front.
Okay. then what I would do, right, is try and make the battle as hellish as possible to bounce them off Germany and just send their forces to Austria-Hungary, who I want to attack anyway. So then they weaken Austria-Hungary, and then I'm like, all right, cool, Pog, and then kill
Okay.
them as well.
Betraying your ally in the middle of a war, big brain play. Very, very,
Oh,
very
wait.
good shit. Very good shit here. Uh, Austria-Hungary was allied with Germany in the war, but I
Okay,
respect the
Pog, never
balls.
mind.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Other thoughts we have on this?
I mean,
Well, I
what's
would
your
want to
choice?
stop the advance by having a suppressive warfare. We're talking about like the hallway, you know.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite characters is engineer because I like doing that kind of activity where I don't necessarily get a lot of kills, but you know, people hate getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you shoot someone a couple times, they retreat. So you can actually hold back a lot of people and not kill anybody. So I'd want to see at that point initially hold them back and deny their resources.
So you want to
That's
bog them down?
bog them down. Yeah,
Yep.
I'd want to bog it down.
Okay.
You see that? You see that? Oh, you can go, Cave.
My thought is, how much resources does Russia have, and how far can they go before they're too spread out?
All right. McMav, you were saying stuff earlier.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what's our choice? Your Eastern Front, your Western Front? So
I
if
mean-
you divide your forces between the two fronts, then you're screwed. So you got to like focus Russia if they're the first aggressor.
Yep. All good answers. I like Caves the best. He's in the same mindset that I am, and that's not to say you guys are wrong. I like playing more defensive styles, and it sounds like Caves in kind of a similar camp where he wants to see how successful the Russian advance is, right? If the Russian advance is fucking nothing, you don't do anything about it. You just ignore it. Your guys there are holding the line. You don't touch it, right? If it's suddenly super fucking successful, well, you probably pull Pop off the Western Front to hit the Eastern Front and stop it, right? And you play that numbers game. You move your force around, and you bump up the numbers on one side and lower the numbers on the other because you need to move your troops, and that's how it's supposed to play out, right? Cool. Do we have questions or thoughts on that? All right, bet. I don't have actually a plan on this one, but I wrote it down because I thought it'd be kind of interesting. What if, again, we're still Germany, right? We're allied with Austria-Hungary. We start a Western offensive, and it's succeeding.
I
Into
would
France?
Into France.
try
We
and force it to that river by Paris because the river is a choke point.
Okay.
That's a good point. So it's your same point, Trudy, but in reverse. You got to know how far you want to go with your offensive before you weaken yourself.
Other thoughts? Cool. Yeah, no, I like
Well,
that. Oh, go ahead, Bosso.
well, there's only cities, so we want to make sure that we concentrate our larger forces on the larger cities, um, because the smaller cities may not have the same effect than the fall of a major city would.
What
To
effect are you
combat-
talking about?
Oh, okay.
Like, your statement implies a strategic value in cities. What is that value you're putting on it?
Destabilization. The requirement for them um, to pull their resources. Because I'm looking at this and I'm saying I'm going to want to get to Paris eventually. And so I'm not going to want to waste my resources on anything here other than, is it Brussels I can see right there? So in this case, I might want to say like in a planet side example, we don't need to hit we want to hit all three um, um, all 3 points at the same time. But if we start to lose one, it's okay to pull that one off and we've got to make sure that we hold at least one or the other two until we can determine what's going on and decide it before we take the third. Otherwise, we risk losing two of them.
Yeah, good stuff. Absolutely good stuff. Tuna, were you gonna say stuff?
What I was gonna say is focus on the smaller cities with as big as a force as possible. Like going back to the fucking
Defeat in
whoever
detail.
shit, defeat in detail, yeah, because they're gonna garrison. Well, I would figure they garrison less important cities with fewer forces. So you lose as few resources on those smaller cities as possible, and then you can concentrate on a big one.
Also a very fine
Also
strategy.
demoralized.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking. I don't know how to translate this to planet side, but I'm looking at that river because that is a way you can get resources into France from, say, Britain into France and help fight you even further in. So my thought would be, look at your lattice lanes and what base has a lattice lane that you need to worry about.
Yeah, that's great. I was actually thinking of the river as a defensive position, but you took it even one level past me, which is really good, right? Because if you get your front up to that river, and you can siege Paris, you can just shell the river, right? You can shell across the river, and it becomes a built trench for you, right? That water line.
Well,
But yeah, no, I like the supply idea a lot. That's really good. What's up?
yeah, I guess a planet side example could be is when we get TI alloys back, that that ridge below TI alloys that comes up from that lower base,
Series.
you've got to yeah, you've got to own that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're not bringing Sundays up that hill, and you're not going to take TI alloys. So
Right.
when you're talking about that, there's a resource. It's not all about killing people. It's you have to own that strip of road right there, where you're not going to bring Sundays to get to put them underneath in that little cave area, or two behind it that you need to, in order to have the Sunday resource to make a better attack, or that bridge as well, at the crown. You may need to own that bridge in order to pull Sundays across it to get into that that cove area.
Absolutely, yes. Agreed.
In
Um,
turn,
do you guys see the things back up, right? You guys can see it?
yeah,
Okay, cool. Sorry. I just
I was
checked
get,
it. Go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was gonna say in Planet Side, isn't there naturally in the lattice some choke points like Fort Drexler, Biolabs,
Mm-hmm.
Lowlands? So
There,
wouldn't you want to get to one of those as your front, and then you can get off that lane for a while if you
yeah.
need to change fronts?
Ideally, absolutely, yeah. And I feel like that's something that I see the other two, especially Vaughn, who do really well, is recognize choke points on the lattice lanes and force that. On some maps, it's really hard to force, and on some maps, it's really easy to force those choke points. Can you guys give me an example of a hard map to force a choke point on? In terms of like getting like deep cutoffs and that kind of aspect?
Esamir, we're always getting back capped on stuff for.
Yeah, Esmer's not bad. Good example. I was thinking Indar, but yeah, Esmer is the same kind of case. How about a map that is easier to get choke points cutoffs on?
Amherst Pog.
Yep, absolutely Emmerich. And the way you can look at it is think of the Indar and Esmer lattice lanes, right? It's a lot of direct connection to each other, right? There are not many ways to go around a problem if a problem persists itself, right? Indar is the prime example of this, where your border with the other factions is usually a tower, right? It's a tower. It's a 3-point tower base, right? Quartz Ridge, Howling Pass, Crossroads, Regent Rock, right? And you got places like Ceres and Indar Calm, right? That are really hard, and Scarred Mesa. These are all really hard bases to take due to their terrain and design, right? So it's really hard to force choke points, right? The only choke points you can really have, like the one I see most common, is a Mal Tech cutoff, right? And even then, you need Series, and I think Briggs to cut that off. Um, versus Amerish, where you think of like what territories we have when we spawn in, like if we're on the southern warp gate, right? We can attack Chimney Rock, we can attack not lowland, Araxicom sub, right? That area. We can hit what is it? Solux Nature, I think it is, on the right side, of the far right side of the map. That vehicle base there. And you can push up the 2 lattice lanes up to Zealous. All right, yeah, I think it's Zealous. Or on the left side of the map, you can push up the 2 lanes to the amp station. Right? There's flexibility there, so you could push up just one of them, and then get the biolab or the amp station, and then cut off the lane. Right? There's a lot more flexibility with those kinds of maps to go for those kind of more strategic cutoffs. Fucking Poke said in no mic chat, treason, with the treason gif, and it's Tuna applying Germany's World War I strategy.
Hell yeah, dude.
And then Tuna said conquer Paris, force France out of the war. Yes, technically yes. Other thoughts on this slide right now we've talked about, or anything else we want to add to this discussion? Okay, so let's talk about, on this note, outfits. It's going to be a bit of a... We have a lot of experienced folks in here, so I think you guys can come up with stuff for it. We're going to talk about... Oh, we're not going to talk about that yet. We're going to talk about this shit. Where's my fucking box? There it is. All right, so we're going to talk about outfits and playstyle. Okay. And how outfits play. Because this is important, and this will be highlighted later on too. It's important to understand your opponents. And what the other commanders on the map are thinking. And generally they're predictable, because you're predictable and we're all predictable, because the mechanics of the game are the same for everybody, right? So understanding that makes it easier to read the map and understand where things are going to happen. So someone give me an outfit.
Recursion.
Okay. How do they play?
They play extremely cohesively, all pushing at the same time, defending every lane as needed. And they're good.
Okay. So what does this look like in a strategic sense?
Their forces are concentrated.
Anything else you want to add to this?
But
What's up, Mav?
they have their lanes covered.
Yeah, lanes covered.
Talking about
So
like
they may not be all centered in one building though.
centered in one building, you said?
No, I
No,
was saying the
not that.
opposite of it.
Not centered. Okay. Concentrated forces. Not centered in one tactical location. Yes, is what we're talking about. Not in one
Correct,
building,
yeah.
but still cover the lanes. That's correct? What you're saying?
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I would also say that they utilize their class specifications. So light assaults are getting odd angles. Everyone's doing their particular roles.
Okay, cool. You guys are getting very tactical with this shit.
Huh?
Now what we're
What'd you
looking
say?
for. You're very tactical with this. We're talking about strategic play, not necessarily tactical play. This is all true statements, but I want to bring
Well,
it back towards other shit. So
They
to,
play redeploy side.
Oh, backcapping, yeah. Recursion backcaps all the fucking time. Like,
Backcapping.
especially biolabs. They go around the biolab instead of straight through when they're actually trying.
Perfect. All right, now that's the strategic shit. Good. Okay.
They don't do pop dump, but they do reinforcement. I don't know what you call that.
I mean, it's still technically pop dump, but you only have like a squad or two, right?
But it's not like Fear dropping 96 plus on a base that had 12 people before.
Right. So they're more reliant on skill than population, but it's the same tactic, right? You're dropping your entire force on it. It's just a difference of numbers in that situation, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Fear.
Get on the point with bodies.
I'm not 100% sure. I feel like it's always overwhelming numbers.
Yeah, the Zerg mentality.
Oh, they for strategy they just push one lane. Keep it as simple as possible. Just continue pushing one lane until they're forced off.
And one thing I like about them, it's hardware. I mean, every time when I'm doing solo stuff and I see tons of Sundays,
Yeah.
tons of tanks, tons of aircraft. They always say fear.
Right. That just reminded me of some stuff I wanted to reference earlier in the presentation. I'll head back that in a second once we're done with this conversation. Actually, yeah, we can hit it right now. We'll pause this mentality for now. Back to the population shit here. I wanted to point out examples that I did the first time, and I forgot to do this time. So, pop. Y'all have heard the term zerging, right? For those who don't know, it is a StarCraft term from the group called the Zerg, which is there are 3 groups in StarCraft: the Protoss, the Terrans, and the Zerg. And the Zerg are numbers, baby, numbers, 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 numbers. They like numbers. Now, that's not to say their units are bad, but they like numbers. They will throw bodies at you like nobody's fucking business. And as they're doing that, they will start building higher quality units to eventually beat you. But they like them numbers. They like cheeky number plays. So that's why these are Mutalisks. That's their air unit, one of their air units, and then this is a Hydralisk, which is one of their good infantry, quote unquote, more like a monsters infantry kind of unit. For speed, and again, this is from StarCraft. For speed, I have a picture of the Brotherhood of Nod from Command and Conquer 3, the Command and Conquer series, which is their playstyle is designed to be hit and run sneaky shit, right? And you can kind of see it here, where these 2 vehicles right here. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay. These 2 vehicles right here, these little tanks with the big cannons on top, they're invisible. These are stealth artillery pieces.
I can see them.
Yeah, I mean, okay, shut the fuck up, okay? These are the enemy can't see them. And the way they operate is you fly in with a Spec Ops team called a Shadow Strike team, and they can put a marker down for you. And then these artillery pieces can fire halfway across the map with the marker. Very hit and run tactics, and then they can pack them. They're very quick. They can pack up, move over like almost any terrain, including water. They're very quick and mobile. They have another thing that are, I think they're called stealth tanks. They literally are just artillery piece, or they're literally like Katushka rocket launchers on stealth tracks. And you can just show up out of nowhere with 20 of them and just like shell a base with rockets and then dip. Cheap units, effective units, quick and agile in their strategies and everything. They use a lot of stealth and that kind of shit. So in this situation, they're using stealth to augment their strengths, which is they can do a lot of damage quick. But a lot of the units have low health bars. Their stealth tanks have low health bars. These things have low health bars. So they use speed and hit and run tactics to make up for that lack of health. Right. Highly recommend both these games. If you want to learn more about strategy, just play strategy games. You will learn a lot. Okay, back to this shit. So Fear runs lots of equipment. Do we have other things we want to add to Fear?
Poke had some comments. Skill dump was one, and they don't get bogged down in farms. I think that's recursion.
Yeah, he was talking about recursion at that point. Skill dump was also recursion. It was all recursion stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll add skill dump here. Cool. If we have anything else on Fear, give me another outfit. Ideally, an enemy outfit.
Fool.
Are the air ones?
They do like everything. And what I was about to say is a lot of times they have like Banshee Mozzies or whatever. They have air supporting their ground units.
Yeah, that's kind of strategic. That's more of a tactical thing. We want to be focusing on strategic for this conversation. Poke will do Asti after this.
Then the rest of the strategy is probably similar to recursion. Then I don't know. I'd have to think about it more to get nitty and gritty.
Sure. Okay. Do we have anything else we want to add to Fool? Or are we good? Okay. Asti. What do we got for strategy on Asti?
This is all you, buddy.
Yeah, I don't know
I don't
them.
know them too well.
Okay. So Asti likes to play similar to us. Clear objectives from the start of the drop. Points on the map. Okay, cool. Another outfit.
Dim giant.
Cat. Strategy.
Chaos.
Bet. What else we got for him?
Numbers.
Cat.
Banana camo.
Bet. All right.
So they do something different that I don't necessarily see Fear do, and that's they support the Zerg. So their members actually like do the roles that are lacking, direct them to different bases, get people over there, run your gals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What else do we got? Other groups.
I don't know how to put this into this kind of word. How to describe it. It's a kind of a feeling. So I'll say it this way, and you guys translate it. It's like somehow their lack of seriousness gives them gives them strength. It's hard to you know what I mean by this.
They don't get tilted. They just
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, I mean, and if they start to, then they'll just pull 30 galaxies and crash them into the point, or they'll,
Yeah.
or they'll pull, they'll pull and do a 40-person max crash and or something like that, or they'll show up and they'll shoot nothing but 4th of July fireworks, and that nobody can fight, and the fight literally is over. It's like stuff like that. It's like they've got this other. It's just this. I don't know if non-competitive is not the word, but they've got this other way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. They have a like a lighthearted mentality about it. And if
Well,
shit hits the fan, they
predictable-
have unique ways of breaking it because of that mentality. What's up, Mav?
A predictable enemy is a defeatable enemy.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with this. How about R18?
Salt everywhere.
Salt, bet. All right.
Teaming up with the enemy to defeat the other enemy.
Say it again.
Teaming up with one enemy to defeat the other enemy. Enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Okay. What else we got? How about actual like strategic decision making? What do they do in a strategic sense? I mean, that's not to say this isn't stuff like that, but
What is Poke got?
Poke said attack enemy morale. So they do a lot of redeploy side, right? They have the Zerg and can strat that they like a lot. Excuse me.
Zerg in a can, really?
Yeah, it's the when you drop 48 people out of a router.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, we call it wall room because that's more fun. Cool. How about DPS? Actually, no, I don't want to do them.
Dark?
Do dark after wildcards. What do we got?
I mean, which strategy do you want? They employ almost all of it. Depends who's rotating through it when it's on.
Okay. Anything else on these guys? Okay. You wanted dark. What
Did
do
I
we got on
want
them?
them? No. They're highly cohesive. Infantry play.
Yep.
Good medics.
Okay.
They don't hold point rooms. They hold the room next to it.
Cool.
And they'll also overhold a base until population moves someplace else, and then they'll redeploy somewhere to cut them off or fight somewhere else.
Yeah, so secure the base. Cool. All right. There's no really good Zerg fits on TR anymore. They're all like larger mid fits. It's a bummer.
Well, what about pigs?
I don't even think they have the numbers to be a Zerg fit. Honest to God. We'll put them though. So Zerg fit, right? What else we got on them?
Max heavy?
Sure.
When I see pigs, I I feel like I always see more aggressive gameplay.
Okay. Okay, cool. So notice how when we started this, we had a fuckload of shit to talk about with recursion, right? And we had a good amount of stuff to talk about fear, right? And when we got to fool, we had like nothing. Why did we have nothing?
Their strategy was similar to a different one.
Correct. Similar to recursion, right? Well, when we got to R18, didn't have much in terms of strategic shit, right? We had shit pists, right? But
Hey,
like,
arguably salt is strategic.
I mean, I guess it can be. Yeah. Like, yes, technically, sure. But we didn't have much here because we already covered it with fear, right? They play similarly. They're Zerg fits, right? Asti has a very similar stuff here to Dark, right? Wildcards, the only thing we had for them is variety depending on lead, right? And we would, even though they're like they're Zerg fit, right? We consider them as Zerg fit. They're the biggest Zerg fit on the server, right? And if we didn't have this shit up here, because I assume everyone was trying to be differentiating things, if we did wildcards first, this shit would be under them, right? My point here is that these are all predictable. We know what these groups do. We know how they operate. We know what to expect. And there are a lot of similar levels of this, right? We know how large outfits operate. We know how elite fits operate, and we know how mid fits operate, right? This is all knowledge we know and understand, right? We all have an implicit understanding of this. It's just unlocking that implicit understanding of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Bet. All right. Any questions on that kind of thing?
So should we have counter strategies to elite fit, mid fit, and Zerg fit, you're saying?
Ideally, but it needs to still play at what we're good at, right?
That was my next question. What is savvy?
We're good at infantry. Infantry's our cream of the crop. We're playing more armor now thanks to Nick. He's pushing shit. And we do have a lot of good tankers in the outfit. They're just not as active, and we're kind of rusty on that aspect. But our infantry and our point and holds are good. They're some of the best on NC. And that's what we should be playing more towards, right? We're in this Astartes Dark mid-fit camp. Where the fuck is Dark at? Down here. Like, this is where we're at, right? We're in this similar level. So understanding that and playing towards that is going to be the key. So we don't challenge wildcards to a vehicle off because we'll know we get clapped, right? But we can challenge them to an infantry off because we know pound for pound our players are better than their players. So there's a chance we win that if we play it tactically correct, right? Now in a strategic sense, tying this back into strategy, all this shit is relevant because this impacts what a person wants to do, right? R18 likes to play redeploy side. That instantly tells you they're playing defensive 24/7. They're literally just going back to different bases, hitting friendly NC bases, and doing it that way and defending shit, right? That's their general standard playstyle, which means an enemy can predict that. If a wildcards lead knows R18 is running shit, they know that if they hit an NC base, there's a good to high chance that R18 will show up, right? And then because we know R18's tactics of Zergana cannon, or like the wildcards guy will theoretically know Zergana cannon, right? They're going to throw a lot of pop at them. They're not going to be super coordinated or organized. They're just going to do a big ass rush. You can prep for it, right? You can put 8 proxy mines and 18 mines on that kind of shit. You can prep a shield or an OS or something like that and be ready with that kind of thing. You can get an idea of like, hey, if we're holding a triple stack or a power generator, we know where to hold and where they will probably come from. All right, we can watch teleporter because we'll probably if we know there's an organized lead on, if Picard's on or something, we know they're probably going to try and take teleporter, so we can prep for that kind of thing, right? As you play more and get used to playing against other outfits, you can pick up on these kinds of things and recognize, especially if you see certain leads on that you'll recognize as leads over time. You can pick up on those kinds of things, right? And again, this is really high level shit we're talking about here. This is not something you're going to get in a week. This is a lot of time in the game and a lot of just playing the game and keeping your eyes open and understanding and learning, right? Recognizing what you need to be learning and learning it. For us, if we're playing against wildcards, right? Like I said, we're focusing on infantry play. We can beat them infantry 1-for-1. We've done it before. We will do it again, right? We call them whenever wildcards show up, we call them it's farming time for a reason, right? Because they're so easy to kill.
Oh my god, it's so nice, dude.
It's so nice. Yeah, exactly. That's literally how we act, right? If Astartes shows up, we know they're going to have some decent infantry players. We're better than them, but they'll probably be more people than what we bring, unless we're running an open platoon, right? If Unity on Terran shows up, right? Their infantry players are generally better than our infantry players because they have a bunch of like old elite players in that outfit. So we need to prep accordingly. We need to be ready for that. We need to use advantages, infantry advantages to our advantage, right? Skill suits, prep defenses, these kinds of things. Recognize that if Unity's operating, they're going to probably come from this way. If we're defending a base or attacking a base, we need to be ready for that kind of thing. It lets you predict the type of outfit lets you predict stuff that it will do because outfits generally lean towards a specific style, and then outfits themselves do variations of those styles that you can operate on as you get used to playing the game more and more, and run up against outfits more and more. That all makes sense. Just fucking OCD's tripping me up. There we go. All right, there we go.
So aside from getting plinked in the head a few times by recursion to figure out that recursion's attacking your base, is there a different way to know before that happens?
So like I said earlier with the gobs example, right? If there's a recursion like biolab or some shit on the map, right, and it's being attacked,
Look at the flag. Okay.
you can pretty much tell recursion's going to be there, right? And be a recursion player for a minute, right? If your recursion's lead, if you know recursion's operating, and your recursions, think about being recursion's lead, and think about being a Vanu for a second, and look at the Vanu map, and say, if I was a Vanu player, if I was recursion lead, if I had a squad and a half of the best head clickers on the server, where would I go right now? Right? What would be my best idea based on what I want to do and what recursion likes to do in our tendencies? Right? They like to farm, they like to play defensive bases, right? Skilled up, as Poke called it, right? So, with that said, there's a recursion base that's being attacked. We're probably going to be defending that, right? And then if no recursion base is being attacked, well, we can go hit this base instead. Or they'll probably come secure this base instead on the NCVS front that the NC is attacking. And you can kind of predict it out that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It really does require like getting in the head of the other faction. It's the same mechanics we do, right? The exact same decision making that you do when you look at the map and say, let's go here. The other team does it. It's the exact same mechanics. It's the exact same forces affecting you that are affecting them. And the decision making is the exact same. It's just the end result is different because your actual situation is going to be different. So as long as you keep that in mind and play like that, and recognize that there are other people playing the game. These are not AIs we're fighting against. These are other players that are predictable and think just like you do. You can recognize that and then basically big brain it and outplay them. And that's consistent like all through fucking history. Like a lot of the big famous battles in history are won not through direct skill or something like that, but better strategic decision making or tactical decision making, and understanding the enemy on how they play and their tendencies, right? And that's what was referenced in the defeat in detail shit. Like, these people recognized what the other side was going to do. Specifically in that video, the defeat in detail video, where he talked about Stonewall beating off that with 17,000 men, beating off the Union force of 70,000 men. That specific example, Stonewall used his men and shuffled them around through 2 different forests to make it look like he had a lot more men than he did, because he knew that the other guy's tendency was to not attack unless he had vastly superior numbers, because he was a little pussy boy, right?
Germany did that too.
What's up?
Initially, Germany did that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They
exactly.
They used to repaint the same plane over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that is very effective. And as a result, that guy was super hesitant. He did not. It was General McClellan. He was super hesitant. He did not want to fight. And Lincoln was like, "What the fuck? You outnumber him. Go take the fight." And he was like, "I'm not doing it. I'm not going to take the fight." So finally, when he did take the fight, it was incredibly forced and awkward. And they were able to use defeat in detail to defeat the Union Army. And like, that's just what happened. Like, Stonewall knew his McClellan's tendencies and how he led as a lead, and played around it, and clapped him because of it. So, and this again, it's just like, this is experience. Leads in these groups generally don't differentiate in mega play styles. They generally run the same kind of thing, right? If we're playing infantry play, most of our infantry leads play this a very similar way, and that's, game wide. There's only so many ways you can play infantry. So, cool. Okay. Game time.
I'm the author of Cyber Junkie, as
Can you
well
guys
as
hear me?
Movers,
Well, hello,
Dreamers, and Risk
everybody.
Takers.
Howdy. Can you guys hear
I'm
the
a
video?
recovering
Yeah.
video game addict, and one of the games that I liked were strategy games. So when I stopped playing those games because I had a hard
Oh,
time
you have to
regulating
watch the video.
myself, I
Sorry,
started
Larry will be
playing
quiet.
other strategy games like chess. And what I found is that strategy games actually make my thinking clearer and more logical. So let's take the example of chess for a second. You don't get better in chess simply by playing. You study the grandmasters. You get books and look into their strategies and moves and attempt to understand them, and then, ultimately, to integrate the lessons that you learn into your own playing. But honestly, going over positions and moves is not sufficient. I mean, even when I played real-time strategy games, I would be a participant and watch other people play, but watching wasn't sufficient. You needed to get into the head of the person, your opponent, whether it's a grandmaster or a computer opponent, whatever, and work at getting a grasp about what that person was thinking, what his or her inner workings were that caused the person to choose a certain move. Strategy is not only a function of coming up with your own plans and actions, but incorporating an understanding of those of your opponent. So becoming adept at strategy games is the most interpersonal of pursuits, because you really need to understand the style and emotional underpinnings of your opponent. The quicker you grasp those things, the more successful you're likely to be. If you look back at some of history's great generals, for example, their genius was often rooted in being able to predict their opponent's moves, a capacity that derived obviously from the power to perceive the inner workings of that opponent. Think of General Lee, for example, as he faced General McClellan in an army that was almost double his size. Lee understood McClellan, and he understood his penchant for delay, and he used that delay to consistently beat General McClellan. So with yourself and your pursuit of becoming better at strategy games, where do you start? Well, I think you need to understand the history of strategy, and in that pursuit, I would recommend Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which comes down to 3 basic principles. Know yourself, know your enemy, and fight only when you can win. This wisdom will serve you well in strategy games, but also it will serve you in business and in any competitive endeavor you engage in. I'm Kevin Roberts. Thank you for watching.
My favorite part about that video is how it's clear as fuck he keeps looking at a script. Like, every, three sentences he peeks down like, oh, there's a script down there. I love it. Nick, you're muted. Or not muted or whatever. You're lighting up. Like
Yeah, I
getting
know.
Oh, there you go.
I
Okay, cool.
figured that out.
Bet. Okay,
Cord
cool.
has to be plugged in. Crazy.
Crazy stuff, dude. Crazy stuff. Matt, were you gonna say something?
Just agreeing with you on the script thing.
Yeah, so fucking obvious. This is a video from 2013. Um, cool. All right. Stop. Fuck off. There we go. Okay, cool. So like he said, read me if you're interested. Where the fuck is my notes? There, speaking notes. Okay, here we go. Bet. So good things to read. I just enjoy reading about strategy anyway. That's why I'm speaking this stuff. If you're a nerd, Clausewitz's On War is a very good read. It's very dense. Both of these are pretty dense. But it's a good read. He's Clausewitz's history. He was around when Napoleon. He was actually serving, I believe, with the Prussians during the Napoleonic Wars. For those who don't know, there were 8 coalitions against Napoleon because Napoleon was that fucking successful. He kept smashing the European powers. Um, and he served with the Prussians and Austrians, I think, separately during those times. And at the time, Napoleon was creating a lot of large strategic decisions that were very successful. He was the first to institute citizen armies. The idea of a Frenchman fighting for France was was never thought of before until now. Before that, all of Europe was reliant on mercenary armies and professional soldiers, where this was the first time where you had like an actual like I'm fighting because of patriotism and that kind of shit. It was not a thing before. Um, when your king's claim is God told me to rule, you don't have much patriotism. Um, so Napoleon did that along with a bunch of other stuff that he standardized. Clausewitz saw all that shit. He saw what Napoleon was doing with war and politics and all that kind of stuff, and wrote a lot of it down and understood a lot of it. And that became a lot of the center of Western military thought was Clausewitz's On War. In the East, Sun Tzu's The Art of War um, was very prevalent, very successful. It inspired a book to be written in Vietnam on very similar principles, more guerrilla tactics and that kind of shit that Sun Tzu was more in favor of versus Clausewitz's very direct confrontational style. Um, and Vietnam has won war after war after war based on that kind of thing, right? And everyone's heard of Sun Tzu's shit. Um, you know, all war is based and that kind of shit. Which is he would cringe if he ever actually heard that because he was not a big fan of war. Um, but they're both very different styles. Clausewitz is very much is war is politics by other means and yada yada yada. While Sun Tzu is very much war is a last resort, only use it for these specific reasons, so on and so forth. Both are very good for strategy in general. And I'm sure if you read this shit, there's a lot of things you could take into PlanetSide to understanding the strategy behind what you can do as a platoon lead in PlanetSide. Okay, cool. So that's the actual ending of the presentation. Anybody have questions on stuff?
Yes, but it probably stems from missing your first 2 meetings.
All right,
So
we can. I'm down to hit those. I'll stop unless we have anyone have any questions related directly to this presentation.
Sure, I
I'm
got
just gonna
one.
head out. So I'll see you guys later.
Peace out. I do have it recorded, by the way, so I'll send that to you.
Oh, well, that's sweet. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, peace out.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Boss, what you're gonna say?
All right. Larry says goodbye.
Bye, Larry.
Okay,
He
so
remembered my name.
so when I think about strategy, and I do because I want to try some strategies at some point. One strategy that I see employed, but not very often, that I think is a good strategy. I don't know why we don't try it more often. Is when there's a fight for a base. I see a lot of times what happens is the you begin to get overpopped, and let's say it starts to get to be 60 40, 65 35. And what happens is there's a sudden drain, and people will then bail the base because of the overpop. But I see the other strategy of what other groups will do, and what I'd like to try doing more of is the what so you'll all of a sudden you'll go run and they'll pull a whole bunch of sunderers and they'll park them around the base because they know it's going to fall. And then when it falls, there's a pullout of the winning team, and the Sunderers are then used to
Hit the base
attempt
again.
take the base again. Yes, it's like don't abandon the base. Um, why does that seem to not be as a popular a strategy?
Um, I think it's a mental thing, and there's a logistic thing to it too. Pulling that many Sundays resource intensive. It's body intensive, right? For an infantry focused outfit, depending on the base, it might be better just hit another base that's better suited for our fight, if that makes sense, on another front or something like that. Um, uh, right? Because if we're running a squad and a half, like, yeah, we can bring Sundays up, but we don't have the pop to defend those things, right? Especially if we're over pop by 30, 40% or whatever, or like 60, 40 and that kind of shit, right? We just don't have the pop. And that leads to a situation where, well, we die if we defend our Sundays, so we want to focus on point. Um, and bada bing, bada boom. It's definitely something we can try, and it's something that I've tried to incorporate a little bit more recently, where I like, okay, let's quickly re-hit this base as they're taking off. But generally speaking, I feel like, especially organized outfits, are really good at keeping enough of a force there to keep the base held until the timer resets. And in that situation, it's almost like we just do the previous drop, if that makes sense. Um, because what you're suggesting too is, like, if I'm understanding you right, you're talking about like you're thinking about the timer, right? The timer's still got a minute before it fully resets. We could actually hit that in time, right? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I think sometimes even if it flips, um, that because it's going to stop being a base of significant interest, um, the battle will swing back in your direction, and you can take the base back because they've already moved on in their thinking, and they've stopped thinking about if it's tactical advantage, and so you use that against them.
So it's
Yeah,
a re-attack, not a second wave.
Right,
yeah.
right. Technically you never leave, but you slow it down for them to draw out, and then you've still got significant numbers, and you just pull it right back.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's comparing the rest of the map too, right? Because like people are gonna recognize what's going on there eventually, right? Because like even when I try that, the active outfits will still redeploy side on us. Um, because the game the general play hasn't changed. It's because a fight got done there. People will still people will still recognize it and go back unless they're engaged in another fight already, in which case they'll be burning. Then we have an opportunity, right? Um, I definitely do. I see where you're coming from though, especially because we do the same thing, right? Like the fact that we're just pulling out after the fight is an example of that mental block that the enemy will also have, where the fight's over, we're out of here, we can go to other places, right? So it leaves the mind for a little bit. So re-hitting it would be a good idea in that situation. It's something I'm down to try more. Just remind me when I'm doing ops or whatever, or when you're doing ops, try it out. I think that would be kind of something cool to at least test. It's worth testing into, looking into.
That kind of goes with my idea that I want to try more of um, when the alert hasn't started, you're literally just marching up the lattice. You know, try to just march up the east side, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and hit every base in a straight line. Sometimes it's like I get this when I'm you can tell I've been thinking about this, but I haven't been in a good enough outfit to actually have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's almost like so much of the map gets hit um, asynchronously that I'll see a synchronous push be so successful, um, almost because so much of the other part of the map is being fought asynchronously. Does that make sense? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
sometimes it's slower gameplay, but I'm not one to worry always about the gameplay having to be so fast.
Right.
The last group I was in, I'm not bashing them, but that's what they really dug for, man. They wanted the faster play. So if we got into a situation where we hit a base and got very little opposition, they would all be bummed out. And I'm like, what are you guys so sad? We just won the base. Let's move to the next one.
Yeah.
Right? It's ready. And there won't be, well, there's not going to be a big fight there. What are you talking about? Let's flip the point.
Yeah.
Right?
Someone's gonna get
Um,
pissed off at some point and come fight us. Yeah.
right. And flip those points. That's part of the game. And to me, part of the game that, is, yeah, run back down to your three sunderers, pile all into it, drive up to the next, drive up the lattice to the next spot, flip that one. Oh, we didn't get contested again. Good. Pile in your sunder again. Right?
Mhm.
drive up to the next one. Is it the most exciting? No, but that's part of the game too. It's that how do I want to say? It's like playing your character, in a way. I'm alive, and you play until you live, until while you're alive, right?
Yeah.
You can't redeploy in real life. In real life, there's another term for that game style. I can't remember off the top of my head. Um, kind of like role playing or something like that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I think there's spaces for that kind of stuff for sure. It's just something we can flush out and test down the line.
Well,
Okay.
keeping it on the strategy conversation, so wouldn't that be a Zerg fit strategy? But then ideally, you break off 75% of the population to redeploy side to be successful someplace else, and then a small group keeps pushing that lane on the 1 to 12, like a single squad. And then when they meet significant resistance, the whole Zerg comes back.
Yeah, if you organize it, you could definitely do something like that. Yeah. Um, that requires more logistics and good squad leads and an expectation in the platoon to match this kind of thing, but it's very doable, right?
Yeah.
Because in that situation, you're talking like, well, you need if you're breaking up the squads that much, you need good squad leads to organize each squad for their current objective, right? Um, and you need squad members to be all on the same page to play that kind of style, if that makes sense. Um, it's
yeah. We
easier.
tried this.
Go ahead.
We tried this a couple weeks ago, and it worked for a little while, but then we got caught onto. If you
Yeah.
remember, there weren't a lot of us playing,
Yep.
and we all hopped into vehicles, and we went to the I can't remember what continent we were on, but we went to the east side where it was all TR territory, and no one was there, and we split up, and we went to 2 or 3 different bases all at the same time and started to flip them all,
Was Mystery
and
leading at the time?
maybe,
Yeah, he
and
loves doing that kind of shit.
at first, it was like going so smooth and so fast, but someone caught on, and all of a sudden, a
Yep.
S ton of hardware showed up. I mean, not a lot of them either, but a ton of hardware was suddenly on us.
Yep.
And because we were doing it because we were smaller at the time, we didn't last too long. But it was a hoot, and it was a hoot getting a rise out of the TR like that and forcing them to come and stomp on us, and we got stomped, but it was still a hoot.
Yeah, that's something I want to do more. I really enjoyed one of the benefits really enjoyed of Alpha Wars. I actually really enjoy on occasion sitting on the map and just telling people where to go, as opposed to actually playing the game. I did that a lot back in the day when I was playing a lot, and that's something I want to work into on Saturday night ops for tryhard ops. But we just need bodies for it if we're gonna run closed for it, which is the downside. Um, I think some of like we had 2 squads of Savion last night, which is good for a Monday night. Um, but we could always use more, so especially because we got 48 like twice for Alpha Wars. Um, okay, cool. What are the questions we got on the strategic sense? Cool.
I
Okay.
mean,
Oh,
do
go
you
ahead.
have do you have canned responses to each of the tiers of outfits strategies? So like the counter strategy to recursion to an Astari to a Zerg fit.
I
I didn't know if you
personally,
wanted to run through those.
I don't. I generally have just like a clear or just a general response to the style of outfit, right? If gobs or recursions show up, um, really, it's usually just like I like playing point holds a lot. So if that's the situation, we just double down on the point hold, and I just remind everybody, hey, check your positioning and that kind of shit, and go from there. But like in a strategic sense, um, it's about for those groups, it's about for small groups about being faster than them. For big groups, about bringing more hardware than them and more flexibility than them. Usually, it's the way I look at it. Because if you can out hop recursion, you will eventually take a base from them, right? Just swinging back because you have 2 timers ticking. Eventually, you will beat them. You just need to be really constantly on the aggressive, and I'm a boomer nowadays and suck at that. Which is a growth point for me. Um, for bigger groups like wildcards or something, bring some skill suits, and bunker down to that goddamn point and mow them down as they try and run up the stairs, or whatever the situation is. Do it as best you can. Um, That'd be actually. I would recommend talking to Mystery about that because he loves the strategic shit. And was basically being groomed to be the next like big strategic lead in DubTac before we split from them. By Money Pants. So he's someone you might want to talk to about that kind of thing and come up with that kind of shit because I think that'd be a project he'd be really interested in actually.
Okay. Yeah. I just thought it was part of this pitch, so I was trying to keep with on the point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Speaking of WTAC and strategies,
Hmm?
so they do the third party approach. I remember doing that money in a bunch of times. So taking armor or a squad or something and trying. We did this with Nick the other night at a bio app. Tried to third party his infantry. Um, the logistics didn't quite work out, but usually you can sway or pull resources off one front to your enemy's fronts without engaging any of the NC fronts by doing this. Right. So have TR and VS fight each other by you increasing pop there and making it a harder fight by third partying them.
Um.
Usually that'll pull it off one of your fronts and you can start pushing your lanes.
So I don't see it going that way usually. When I see that kind of thing, if I'm a Vanu or TR lead in that situation, I actually pull troops off that environment. Because my thought process in that situation is if I see a DubTech or a Savvy armor column like was going on last night in Amherst, right? If I see them show up, I recognize that that base is not going anywhere because there's just a fucking enemy armor column that's there to kill everything on site, right? That base
Well,
is not going anywhere.
but what about infantry?
Same kind of thing, same kind of situation. Um, I recognize that like the way I perceive it is that if there's a 24 to, if I'm a Terran lead, right, if I'm in a Astartes and I have 24 to 48 fighting 24 to 48 at a Vanu fight, right? That's 50-50, right? We're defending the base, and NC shows up to help with the fight or whatever. I'm leaving because the NC and the VS are gonna fight each other, or I'm most likely going to leave. And if I can pull out most of my forces there and still hold the base because the Vanu are suddenly too preoccupied fighting the NC to take the base, dude, you're freeing up my pop. I'm 100% in on this. And likewise, if I'm attacking a Vanu base and it's 50-50 and NC showed up to third party, I'm like, okay, this isn't winnable. And now the NC are opting to use resources on a base they have no chance of capturing and pin down Vanu forces there for the hell of it. I'm out of there. I've got other shit to do.
Yeah, I can see it from your perspective.
Right? Like, I just don't see. In fact, I've lost alerts because of NC third wheeling like that, or third partying like that. I've actually lost alerts because of it. One guy took 3 squads. This is a long time ago in an alert. He took 3 squads to third party at Moss Ravine and ate up like a squad of Terrans and a squad of Anus, and that was it. And if those 3 squads were on our fronts, we would have won the alert, and we lost the alert because of it. Because he was wasting our pop advantage by doing that. So like I can see the argument for it could bring other pop, but that implies that the leads really want to defend the place, and in that situation, or like really want the base, or really want to defend the place, so they're willing to commit more resources. And generally speaking, I would just write the base off in that situation.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, if Nick had, and you guys had other success in different ways, like I'm all ears. But just thinking about it logically, like that's what I would do in that situation as one of those leads.
Typically, the good candidate is when you as a third party can farm without tipping the balance one way or not, but just kind of provoke or stir it up. But if you're drawing NC population away from NC fights, like a giant 48
Right.
armor column, 96 armor column, then that's retarded. Money was
Exactly.
doing stupid shit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can provoke a fight and like make the two sides fight more, I see your point. It doesn't necessarily work. I can see how commanders would pull off. But if it's like 2-3% NC versus 48s,
Yeah, in that kind of situation, I can see that argument where it's just stirring shit up and it causes more
Yeah,
issues.
snipers or
Yep.
some liberators and
Add the chaos element.
Yeah, and then you can be a lot more targeted with that too, right? If Terrans are defending the base and they're about to pop the Vonu Sundi, wipe that Terran push, keep the Vonu there. You can keep the fight going longer. In that, I can definitely see arguments for that kind of thing. It's just in that situation, yes. It's just, again, it's reliant on the other lead for the other factions to still want to be committed to the fight. And if it's too much pop, then they will just say, fuck it, I'm out of here, right? For one reason or another.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Okay.
I mean, I can go on for days, but
I mean, we can after the fact. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you for whoever watching. At Jack, at Larry. Please stop having schizophrenia. It's bad for your health.